Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and with 2024 behind us, 2025 should bring a lot of new products and updates. Last year, Apple released lots of different things, some unexpected, some expected, and this year is expected to be fairly similar, but with some changes to different product lineups. So we're going to go over everything to expect this year, starting with January and going all the way to the end of 2025. Now, the first thing we're expecting is iOS 18.2.1 to release to the public. This should hopefully patch a few issues people are having with iOS 18.2, and also we're expecting iOS 18.3 Beta 2. Those things are expected very soon. They could be out by the time you're watching this video, but mostly next week at this point is what I'm expecting, or later this week. As far as products this year, we're first expecting Apple to update the MacBook Air to the M4 version. Currently, we have the M2 and M3 available, and this is the M2, but we're going to get a spec bump, according to Mark Gurman, before anything else. It makes a lot of sense. Apple could just put the new processor in here, bump up the specs, and not really change anything else when it comes to the MacBook Air. This is one of my favorite devices, and so really all they need to do is bump it up to an M4, and it will be up to date and ready to go. So I wouldn't expect too many other changes, probably just an announcement that they've updated it on their website at this point. But that could be any day now, probably early January or something along those lines. When it comes to phones, well, we are expecting a big update there to the iPhone SE. I've talked about this in the past, but the new thing seems to be that it could be called the iPhone 16e instead of the SE 4th generation. This might make sense. We don't know if it's economy or what it stands for. It was special edition, but iPhone SE 4 or 16e could bring a few new changes. We're basically expecting it to look a lot like the iPhone 14, even with the notch, with Face ID and OLED, but also to have one camera that's 48 megapixels and then basically have a newer chipset to support Apple Intelligence with 8 gigs of RAM. That's really all we know about this. It seems like it's going to be a minor update as far as what we've seen with iPhone 16, but a big update to the iPhone SE as far as getting rid of Touch ID and LCD. That's what we're expecting, hopefully a larger battery as well, and maybe a few other things we weren't expecting with some nice colors as well. Now, at the same time as that, Apple typically announces a few different products. We could see an update to the iPad Air. We could see just a spec bump. I wouldn't expect a whole lot of changes here, and possibly an iPad 11. So we haven't seen that either. So a small bump up in the overall specs, maybe the same design, all the same accessories and everything else. So we'd be good to go there. So that's what I would expect for the iPad Airs in the early part of this year. And around the same time, I would also expect Apple to release iOS 18.3 to the public. That makes a lot of sense. When they release new devices, we have a major update. So we could see that in a couple months, probably at the end of January or in February at this point. We don't really know an exact date just yet. Also, we're expecting Apple to update its home lineup quite a bit this year. Not only are we expecting a HomePod Mini 2, we're also expecting something called a Home Hub or possibly a HomePad, according to 9to5Mac. We've heard about this quite a bit from Mark Gurman, where we could have a HomePod basically with a screen on it to allow us to not only make FaceTime calls, but also manage our home and just have a communication device with Siri around and Apple Intelligence. We could see something like that in the early part of this year, but I would expect it after the iPad release or at least around the same time frame. So that's typically what we're expecting. Not any major updates there, but Apple is said to be working on additional home products such as cameras and more. We also can expect iOS 18.4 to release sometime around March. Last year we saw iOS 17.4 on March 5th. Apple is supposedly going to complete Apple Intelligence, at least for iOS 18, with this integration. However, we may not see the full Siri integration at that point. So we'll expect more later on, but by iOS 18.4, we could see many more new Apple Intelligence features for Siri. Then we'll move on to iOS 18.5, where we expect that probably around May. Last year we had iOS 17.5 on May 13th, and then not a whole lot around that time frame. So we can expect similar releases this year, and then we'll move on to WWDC, typically in June. Usually early June is when we have it. It could be the 2nd, it could be the 9th, but typically that's where Apple will show off a lot of different software. iOS 19 betas, macOS 16, watchOS 12, visionOS 3, tvOS, and HomePodOS 19, or possibly an all-new HomeOS, and then we could see some additional Macs as well, such as the Mac Pro updated to an M4 Ultra and the Mac Studio M4 Ultra as well. Those things are what I would expect. Maybe we'll see some other surprises, maybe an iMac Pro again finally, or a larger iMac, along with a studio display as well. Those are things that I would expect to be updated hopefully to 120 Hz, or at least a Pro Display XDR at 120 Hz. We haven't seen that updated in quite some time, so whether or not we'll get that, I don't know, but hopefully we see something along those lines. Of course, most of the updates come out toward the end of the year, but between WWDC, we'll have all the iOS 18 betas, and July and August are typically pretty slow, where last year we had iOS 17.6 release on July 29th, and we do see other updates in between if they need to fix additional issues, such as iOS 17.6.1 or a 0.1 update. So we could see iOS 18.6 around the July timeframe or August timeframe. In September and October, that's when we get the most updates. iOS 19 is expected to launch, watchOS 12, and all the others I mentioned before, along with all new iPhone 17 models. Now, iPhone 17 Plus is said to be gone, replaced by a new slim model or iPhone 17 Air. So we may not have a Plus model this year and instead have a regular iPhone 17, 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max, along with a special Air version that's thinner than what we've seen in the past. So Apple will compromise here a little bit, maybe getting rid of some of the buttons, whether it's camera control or the action button, or maybe they'll have them and they'll just be smaller and be able to fit in the frame. Either way, we expect a big update there, something a little bit different with a significant sort of redesign even for the iPhone 17 Pro models. So we don't know 100% what Apple's going to do there, but we do think they'll replace some sort of case as well for fine woven. We had fine woven in the iPhone 15 days. It seemed to not really be welcomed by many people. I personally don't like the texture at all, but some people did love it, but Apple hasn't replaced it. They didn't release it for the iPhone 16 models and instead released Beats cases. So we don't really know what they're going to do there. Along with the iPhones, of course, every year we get some updates to AirPods, it seems, and this year is no different. We're expecting AirPods Pro 3rd generation. Basically, there'll be an upgrade to what we have now, but possibly with a heart rate monitor built in. We're seeing this with Powerbeats Pro 2 coming very soon, and this could monitor your heart rate in your ear and have additional health functionality as well that we're not expecting. But basically, we'll see some updates there. How it's going to be marketed, whether it's separately or not, we don't really know. Also, we're expecting an update to AirTags. AirTags apparently are going to get some updates with a different chipset inside, allowing for better reception from longer distances and possibly better battery life. So we could see some changes there. Not a huge update, but enough to warrant a replacement, it seems. Of course, we finally expect an update to the Apple Watch Ultra, bringing it probably to Apple Watch Ultra 3. So we could see something along those lines. What it will have to offer, we don't really know. Many people have wanted new sensors, such as maybe blood pressure or hopefully glucose sensor someday, if Apple can get that to be accurate and correct over time. But either way, we don't know 100% what Apple's going to offer there. But we do expect a new version, possibly with some upgrades. We also expect an Apple Watch Series 11 and a replacement for the Apple Watch SE at some point to the SE 3rd generation. Or maybe they'll call it the Apple Watch 11e. We don't really know. But at this point, it looks like Apple's going to replace it. They're replacing the SE line at this point, so I would expect it with the watch as well. Of course, after that, once we have all of those products released, we can also expect iOS 19.1. That's what Apple typically has, iOS 19, 19.1, or 19.0.1, and then 19.1, and then 19.1.1 as needed. So that's usually what we get every year, just like last year. Now, toward the end of the year, we could see a new Apple TV as well. It could be any time throughout the year, but an upgraded Apple TV, as well as M5 MacBooks introduced. So we could see an update maybe to the Mac Mini with an M5, MacBook Pro, or maybe something completely different. We're not expecting any updates to the iPad Pro just yet. However, we could get that maybe with an M5, but we don't know at this point. But honestly, after using this, I don't see a reason that it needs an update yet. Also, we could see some unexpected updates. So I'm looking forward to see what they have this coming year. Hopefully iOS 19 focuses on stability. And toward the end of the year, I would also expect some updates. iOS 18.7, Just like last year, we had iOS 17.7 on September 18th, and then maybe iOS 19.2 by the time December rolls around, with iOS 19.3 betas by the end of the year. That's typically what we have every year, so I would expect Apple to sort of stick with that unless they have some changes. So that's everything so far we're expecting. There could be quite a few other things we're not expecting, but hopefully we see some surprises mixed throughout there. Let me know what you're looking most forward to in the comments below, and I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.